feel compelled to do a video today about when people go a little bit too far, I think, in explaining conspiracies when it comes to government. And I might be one of those people who it seems is doing that. So I thought I wanted to sort that one out. So I don't believe that governments have been assembled for the sole purpose of screwing us over. And I don't believe it was the case that, because I've described this before about the progression of different power structures that dictate to us, rob us of our freedom, control us, and are basically parasites. I don't really think it's a case where, you know, a whole bunch of people got together and say, right, let's see how we're going to run this. It's something that happens more organically. So obviously church came around because people had, I don't know, a gap in their soul, whatever the fuck, they needed something to believe in, and needed a bit of togetherness. Governments came around to organize and you know, rally together and do things in a more organized way originally. So I don't think any of these things started off with bad intention. It's just that any time something is good, we gravitate towards good. We give it respect, and you know, we put it on a pedestal. So those good things, which can start out being government, religion, whatever else, in time, with the exception of monarchy, because that's just based around, oh, I've got this is mine, everyone worship me. But everything else, well, even that probably came from a good thing, didn't it? Maybe tough times, you had to fight tooth and nail for everything you had. And maybe some people just went a little bit overboard, and then when they won a few battles against the people attacking them, they decided to go overboard and start taking everyone else's money. And then there was, after that, emperors or kings and queens, right? My point is that all these systems, let's say the kings, you know, knights and all these sort of people, there's always politics that goes on. There's internal politics besides the politics that has to happen. So, for example, negotiations on behalf of the company, there's always the internal politics. And I think this is really where the corruption disease come from. Because the internal politics, let's say, of a local government will just be that it's a pain in the ass to work there, things don't get done. The internal politics that you get around, let's say, the federal government in America, or the Parliament in the UK, or even the House of Lords, I'd say, there's that element that will be self-serving and infiltrate power structures. And I think this is where it comes from, the great evil overall, and this perception that people have of the government. It's really not the government as such. It's what thrives in such power structures. And so one point would be that, you know, we could look at that and say that, well, we need to just find better ways to get rid of corruption. But I think the reason why I don't like government so much, and any power structure for that matter, is because at the point that we're living in mankind's overall evolution and development, which may have happened before, and I think there's no point struggling to make this work, when what we should be struggling to do is make it not exist, because it no longer serves a purpose. We don't actually need the kind of centralized authority by way of nationalized or way of globalized authority that was probably required to take us where we are now. Different things will be required at different times. I think capitalism will be required for quite a while to come, but true capitalism will need to somehow bring back what's been lost for probably a good part of 100 years. True capitalism, where you have proper market, proper markets based upon supply and demand, and competition. So, other than that, if we were to get rid of government, we have all the tools we need, and we have the technology we need. We have that seed technology. We don't require grids anymore. We don't require a power grid. We don't really need these things. We don't even require a roading infrastructure, really. If you imagine the amount of technology just in the fact of your cell phone and the microwave and a lot of the technology around us that was taken from military technology. Imagine what the military have that they're hiding from us because we paid for it. So let's say, for example, the whole human race goes open source at the same time, and now everything becomes non-secret. Could you imagine at that point where mankind could go? It would be good if a war ever happened one day that were the outcome, that everything became open source. Because fire was open source, we shared that, look where we went, If we can get back to this, and a lot of idiot, not Americans, but idiot Americans would go like, that's commie, sharing stuff. No, just sharing knowledge. This is what the open source community is about. I've just seen one of the guys, might be the CEO from gab.com, and talking about this same thing. I think there'll be a big drive for companies, just because you've seen the rise of companies that have changed their laurels, like Google, for example, and have actually removed things that they're saying just because they go exactly against it, because they are operating as an evil company. Probably didn't start out like that, and I'm sure they didn't. They started out with, they wanted to do something cool. They came up with an idea, and then out the back of that, internal politics. What do? You get a drive for doing evil things. Anytime there's power, people who are horrible people will be attracted to power. People who are good people are attracted to doing something great, and then they get bored, they move on, or they do something different, or the company goes too big, and they just get lost among the the sheer volume of people. But one thing that doesn't change is that horrible people will always be looking for how to infiltrate and how to gain what the others just don't give a shit about. Power and just more toys, more stuff at the expense of someone else, just that kind of shit. And that's what I wanted to say was, yeah, I see things from both sides. People who think, especially people who are dumb enough to think that everything's a conspiracy theory and you're a tinfoil hat wearing idiot, but also on the other side where people are that person who really is on the extreme side of believing every little thing that comes out. The middle ground really is that the government's not a big conspiracy, but conspiracies do happen by people who have a will to corrupt it, and it always will. You'll always have horrible people doing that, and this is what we have: is we have peak corruption. And it's been going for a long time. The rampant corruption that we have in all of our countries, and the banding together and the collusions within collusions within collusions, because what we really have is a case where we're ruled by a bunch of clubs around the world, these elite clubs, and sometimes they're friends and they form alliances, so it's a big super club, like Britain and America and the EU, and they kind of have separate clubs. That's the way you kind of got to think about it, because that's exactly what it is. Become persona non grata. If all the clubs are getting on well, it means that Earth is out of bounds. But when they're not getting on well, they always will be someone who doesn't, like North Korea or Russia not getting on well with the West, whatever it might be. It always means that you have somewhere to run away to. But it's the same reason why someone from those countries, from all those countries, is running away to where you're from. Because they're no better than each other, because they have the same problems. And those problems obviously weren't architected by someone saying, I want to start a government here to control people to do this. No, it wasn't. It was governments moving on organically from the church being the head of state, or the mosque being the head of state, into the next iteration of civilizations with separate cultures. Yeah, that's about it, really. We don't need to rescue these power structures. We simply need to not break them down straight away. We need to just phase them out in a smart way. If we don't phase them out, it's this kind of similar thing like what happened in South Africa. Nelson Mandela didn't want to end things too quickly. I don't think what's his name again? F.W. de Klerk didn't either. Who did was the outside influences wanted to change South Africa very rapidly. And the reason for that is because they wanted chaos. These chaos engineers, these are the infiltrators between governments. These are the really the injected corporate entities that exist between all layers of government. In whichever way, it's either a plant or someone who's bought, just someone who donates money on behalf of a party. And there's all these little infiltrations of corruption and agenda outside of what that tool, the government, was intended for. It was intended for the betterment of, well, usually the town or the country or maybe the human race, whatever it might be. But it's always for the betterment of something. That the corruption is when the wealth and power, prosperity is used for something other than it was intended. This is where the point where all our governments sit now. Because they all want more money, more money, more money, but we're getting more and more efficiency. So if we're getting more efficiency, we're able to do more with less, but we're getting more because we're printing money than we've ever had before, then why do we still need so much? Why are we still not working, very few hours, but all of us having a job, but working very few hours, very little effort, and getting much more for it? And the reason is we could, well, the answer is we could, but there's just so much being sucked out of the system from the bottom from this deep-seated corruption that's everywhere. And the only way to get rid of it is, unfortunately, to start phasing out government, which is a lot of jobs. But it makes sense in the end that jobs just simply won't exist. They just don't need to exist in the way that we understand them. Hasidic Jews probably have the best idea, although this is applied to learning about religion. I think that the next answer for humanity is to be embracing automation, because we can't change it. There's no point pissing in the wind. And use it to our, use it to our best advantage to drag the human race kicking and screaming into the next level. And it's the only way we're probably going to undo this, what I've termed before as anti-eugenics. So, yeah, go back to, if we're not going to have survival of the fittest because of modern technology and culture, we shouldn't allow that to push us down a track of survival of the weakest. And that's the problem that we're going through right now. We need to get over that. We need to educate people so they don't grow up to be the weakest, so they be the strongest person they can be mentally, physically. And and just stop making catastrophic mistakes, because everything we do is on behalf of the whole planet, not just ourselves, not just our species, but actually life itself. We need to understand that responsibility more as a race. And get our fucking ass into gear. Cheers. Bye.